choyo sambo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngonda pelge drolor zampe tse parche palden lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sane Kar Utta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sane Kar Utta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Sumati Munishas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudandagi Lo Pakyuke Sundandagi Pakyuke Tudandagi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudandagi Lo Makyuke Sundandagi Makyuke Tudandagi Tenyerme Chikto Chingilo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Soha.
Lama Tsongkhapa, in one of his texts, said,
Sadan lamyang sang, samba ngena sadan lamyang nge, tamche sambadala ragle peth.
which means, in a certain context, let's just extract it from its context, but he said, if thoughts are virtuous, if the mind is virtuous, the stages and the paths are virtuous. If the mind is negative, if the thoughts are negative, the stages and the paths are negative. Everything depends on the mind. This doesn't mean that reality around us doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that there's not a material, physical reality of relationships. But what's the greatest difference between us, for example, and a plant, or between us and a stone? I mean, is stone a living being? Does it have birth and death? A birth and death? Yes. I think yes. I mean, a stone begins, has, and after a certain point, it turns into something else. It turns into dirt or sand. I mean, it's easier to understand with a tree, even a mountain, but a tree, a plant, is part of a category called living beings, but not sentient. We are both living and sentient beings. A living being is a being that has a birth, has a lifespan, and at a certain point, death. And during its lifespan, it interacts with with the world surrounding it. But this interaction is based on the physical, biological aspects. So with a plant, if you add the right amount of water and give it the right amount of sun, it's always going to act in the same way. There are rules depending on how the plant is. So if things are done in a certain way, then the reaction is the reaction is always that. It's easier to work with plants than with people. The more you're able to understand how that plant interacts. If you do this, you will have this response, and every time you do that same thing, you will have the same response. But every time you do the same thing with a person, do you have the same responses? No. Imagine if a plant were like a person. You water the plant today, and this is, oh, I don't like the way you watered me. You were frowning. You know, you should have watered me before. I was expecting the water to be a little cooler. You gave more water to the plant next to me. No, today I'm not going to flower. So what happens is that a living being lives and interacts according to its, let's call it, biology. So according to what happens, it reacts in a natural way according to its natural process. A sentient being, as well as being a living being, having its own biological system that we do have, there's an extra part which is consciousness. There's a part of the mind that determines certain choices. And in these choices, we mostly choose where and with whom and how we interact. And our only power of change, what we have on, for ourselves and for others, is interaction. And the rule we said yesterday, wherever there's interaction, there's change. And according to the type of interaction, it brings a different kind of change. So if I want to change something, I need to interact in a certain way for there to be a kind of change. So where is our freedom? Our freedom of choice. It's very, very small. And this is not what I want to deepen right now. So I'm not going to open the doors, where is our free will, etc. But the point is, no one is free from his past. Giving you an analogy, which is not the best, but it works. We're free to buy what we want, aren't we? Are we free to buy what we want? Yes. Yes and no. Yes, we're free to buy what we want, but given two conditions: that what we want to buy is for sale, and that we have enough money to afford that thing. If I say, I want that thing, well, how much does it cost? 1,000. Oh, but I only have 100. I'm sorry. They told me I'm free to buy whatever I want. Well, now you're free to buy what you want with the amount of money that you have. You can do what you want within the resources that you have. We live in a reality where there's freedom of movement, right? But can I go somewhere where there's an entry fee and I don't have a ticket, a museum, or you haven't booked, or you're not a member, or you haven't bought a ticket? Oh, but I'm free to move. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm free to move around within the conditions that are there, according to the places where I would have access. In the same way, I'm free to buy what I want. if I have money and if that thing that I want to buy is for sale, because I can have all the money in the world and I go to someone, but what I want to buy is not for sale, and then I won't be able to have it. Similarly, in our lives, we can do everything that we want, but we're linked to the causes and conditions that are created. The causes are all our choices, our interactions that we've had up till now. And the conditions of this present moment, these interactions with everyone else. I mean, we are linked to this. And if we go even further, our choices that we make in this present moment, I mean, are they completely free or are they conditioned by our education, the information that we've had, the experiences that we've had, our body, by our social context, our genetics, everything, and so on? I mean, we think that we're free. Sometimes people say, oh, they manipulated me. But when have you not been manipulated? We are constantly manipulated in one way or another. I'm manipulating you now in these days. I hope in a positive way. But in interacting, we're constantly directing in one way or another, aren't we? So our freedom is really, really small. But in our perception, when we wake up in the morning, are we free to stay in bed a little longer or to get up and meditate? Can we choose? Yes. Can we choose, I'm going to say this thing? No, I'm going to stay quiet. And we can choose there too. Can we can we choose to show an emotion or choose not to follow an emotion or choose to be overwhelmed by that emotion? Sometimes it's very difficult, but that possibility is there. Our freedom can be found in the very small daily actions. But what determines these actions, these things that we do, the interactions that we follow? Our choices or the conditions? I mean, what is fruit of what? The conditions are a result of our choices, or our choices a result of the conditions that we meet? Our choices, in part, are a result of conditions, but conditions are actually results of the interactions that we have and what we do. So what really makes the difference is our mind. So what makes the difference, what allows us to be able to realize incredible things or to do terrible things, they're not the conditions that we were born with. I mean, just look at in history. I mean, there are people who were born with horrible material conditions and were able to make a ton of money, or there are people who were born very, very rich and died extremely poor, or people who were born with a very difficult physical situation, and were able to develop a high-performing, healthy body. I think about Joseph Pilates, who had rickets, and for the power of his mind, he had a constancy that led him to transform completely his body and develop a system of health. Instead, those of us who have a healthy body, our national sport is, how to ruin this good health that we have, our way of eating, sleeping, our way of moving or not. We know clearly that the main cause of sickness is a lifestyle. Even if we look at tumors, cancer, when my experience at least, talking to doctors, those who study scientifically, academically, um, the causes of tumors, the only answer that was given to me is modern lifestyle. Because so many things together, but it's this modern lifestyle that we have that is the main cause. So what determines all of this in the end? Our mind, our thoughts, our emotions determine our actions that then determine our interactions with the world, that determine how we shape ourselves, how we transform. Is this clear? Let's give you another example. A relationship with someone else, for example. What determines the how that relationship goes? If there's enough money, if there's enough time, if there are lots of things, or the inner state, the mental state of each one. It's the mind that determines the relationship because the mind manifests in the body and it shows itself up in speech and action, and that interaction, and every interaction brings about change. Every action should be given the right amount of weight in the end. The crucial point here is seeing our way of acting starting from our mind towards the world, our physical actions, towards our way of speaking. And here again, the importance, the enormous importance of taking care of our own mind, taking care to have a healthy mind. We live in a times where the concept of taking care of our body, going to the gym, eating well, this is all very present in our modern world. You know, if you say you need to eat well, you need to eat healthy, it's obvious. Maybe not for everyone and um, and everywhere, but for us, it's obvious. Our physical body is nourished by what we eat, and we know there's certain foods that are good for us, and other foods that we even call it junk. I mean, junk food. It's garbage. So the mind is nourished too. The mind is nourished by all the objects of the senses, what we see, what we hear, and all of our objects, the objects of the mind. If we put in a lot of junk, then the mind is going to get sick too. At a certain moment, I thought, how beautiful would it be? Just like we have gyms, even at school, no, there's physical education, PE, even in Italy. Why don't we do mental education? Where they're like gyms for the mind. In lunch break, you go to meditate. So one side would be a tragedy because we would take away all of the spiritual reason. It would become very utilitarian, but and we would take away the real power of meditation by doing this. But it would also be great because, I mean, in our lifetime, it's useless to say, oh, how wonderful it would be if at school I had learned to meditate or if there were more awareness in our society. No, we need to start with ourselves now. Instead of saying how beautiful it would be, instead, let's apply this all to ourselves and to our lives. We sit down, we buy a comfortable cushion, we create our space, and we start where we are. Just to remember how important this is in our lives. Just to remind you how important this is in our lives. Now let's go back to more practical aspects. We've seen the correct posture of meditation, this allowing ourselves to just be seated in that posture, familiarizing ourselves with the body, familiarizing ourselves with staying still, and the techniques to to dissolve tensions in our body and our mind. Our breath, where we inhale light and we exhale black smoke, dissolving our tensions. So breathing in from our nose, breathing out from our mouth, and then also just breathing in from our nose and breathing out from our nose, and then our breath in four stages. And then we have this object, choosing our object of meditation as the sensation of the air entering into our nose as we breathe in and as we breathe out. And we've seen how important it is to not block or follow other thoughts that come while we have our mind placed on top of our object of meditation. And so this needs to be done often. And two things. So the duration of, at the beginning, the duration of a session on our breath, for example, it's said that we should do many short sessions instead of few long sessions. So it's better to sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour. So when we're comfortable, we stop while we're still comfortable, and then we take a break and we start again. So we do more sessions, even if they're short, instead of very long sessions that very few. So better to do a short session in the morning and then another one later in the day. Like a muscle that with constancy, when it's worked, it builds up. And if we do a meditation and we force for a long period and it becomes tiresome, and we end the practice tired, our system somehow will try to avoid what in our memory was tiresome or tedious. I saw this, like going to a restaurant, for example. You go to a restaurant, 50 times is wonderful. You go there once, and then one time it's not good. Then the next time you think, no, the food's not good there. Maybe someday something happened to the cook, or that can happen. But no, even if we'd been there 50 times and it was great, that one time our mind remembers that last experience. We generalize based on the last experience. So when we end something, if we end something in a negative way, then our tendency is to want to avoid that thing. So if we end a session exhausted, our tendency would be to want to avoid doing that again, and we'll look for every excuse possible. Oh, I should meditate, but I have my children, or I need to work. I've got this, I've that. We find 1,000 different excuses. We're great at making up excuses. I saw, me. I see when there's something we should do, but one doesn't want to. One invents amazing excuses. This is called laziness. Laziness is the union of two factors. It's this awareness, this conceptual awareness of the importance of something, united to the lack of desire for doing that thing. So I know I should, but I don't want to do it. Why don't I want to do it? Because I have a bad memory of that thing. I know it's good for me, but I just don't want. Because wanting is based on the memory, the previous memory of a sensation. If we do something and we feel good, even if afterwards we learn that that's bad for us, or we find out that's bad for us, we still want to go back. We want to go back and doing that. A simple example is mozzarella, which is not good for me, but I really enjoy it. And as I eat it, I don't have the negative effects immediately. You know, luckily I'm able to control myself, but I have this desire to eat mozzarella. If if I would eat mozzarella and be sick immediately, of course that desire would change. So we need to be careful about this mechanism, about things that are good for us, to not push too much. So we should end our session where we're still in a positive, relaxed, a pleasurable state, so that we want to do it again. So that's why we say at the beginning we should have more frequent, shorter sessions, and as we go on, we can we can lengthen our meditation sessions, like 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on the person. So this is one important aspect that I wanted to bring to light. Now there's another technique that I want to share with you. That's part of the preparation to meditation. So what we've seen so far, we have two parts. There's preparation to meditation, the part of the body and dissolving our tensions. And then we started doing a meditation on our breath, where we're training to meditate. And then what we should do is to substitute the object of meditation. This tool that I want to give you now is part of the preparation. So before beginning our meditation on our breath, it's a technique that I really like. It's relatively easy, has a very good effect, and according to the context or the situation, one can substitute this with what I explained before or do a little bit of both. In Tibetan, it's called Lung Ro Gultrup. Lung Ro. Lung means wind, and it's the translation of prana in Sanskrit. Prana is translated as is a kind of form of energy. In Tibetan, we say lung, which literally means wind. Ro depends on the context. It changes its meaning, but in this specific case, it means ro means corpse. For example, if you make a tea, when you finish your tea, and the tea and the tea is not giving any more essence, let's say, so it's the leftover, the leftover tea, and in Tibetan they call it the corpse of the tea bag, cha ro. Just also understand how the language works. It's there, but it's no longer what it was. So lung, wind, ro, corpse. It's the corpse of the winds. Gu drup. So gu is 9 and drup is realized. So it's a breathing in 9 cycles to eliminate the energetic corpses. So when with our emotions we have jealousy and fear, attachment, anger, so tensions are created in our body that somehow they create energetic blocks, and they're described as like blocked energy. And this technique, this cleans our subtle energy channels and unblocks the body. The technique in itself is quite simple, but I'll explain it. There's a part that's explained in a classic way, and then there's a small part based on my own experience that I'm going to add, and you can try it yourselves. Okay. So in this exercise, so let's start first with a visualization. So we imagine what our so-called subtle body. And here I'll add something, and then tomorrow we'll talk more about it when we talk more about visualizations. So visualizations is one of the most powerful ways we have to direct our minds. When we imagine something for our brain, it's as if we were actually living that thing. On an energetic level too, when we direct our attention somewhere, the energy goes there. Even from a neurological standpoint, our friend who had there's a friend of ours who had she had a stroke and a part of her body was paralyzed, and the therapy that she had to do was to imagine herself moving, because when we imagine a movement we're sending stimuli, and the body the brain creates new pathways. So when we imagine something, our mind pushes our central nervous system, our body, to realize that. So we imagine our central channel. Our central channel, practically, it's where our spinal cord is. We imagine it's like an umbrella handle that goes from our forehead down, all the way down, and ends at the base of our spinal cord. And then we have two side channels. And the way to visualize depends on the practice that is to be done. It's not a visualization that corresponds to one's body. The way to visualize depends on how one wants to direct one's energy. That's why it's a little bit different depending on the practice. In this case, we imagine the two side channels that start from our nostrils, and they are on the side of our central channel, side, and then at about 3 fingers underneath the navel, they enter into the central channel. In other practices, we need to imagine these side channels that turn around the central channel and create the chakras. Here, no, we just imagine our central channel, which is absolutely straight, and the two side channels that go all the way down and then enter into the central channel. We're seated in the correct meditation posture. The first thing, I explain it to you first. Um, Maybe you like to do as I'm explaining it to help you memorize it. But we visualize our central channel, the two side channels, and normally it's good to start with the preparation of meditation. So allow yourself to just be still, be aware of your breath, calm a little bit, and then when we're in a more neutral state, we visualize our central channel, the two side channels. If someone asks me, I'm not able to visualize, how can I do? Let's use the word imagine instead of visualize. Oh, well, I don't know how to visualize it, but if I ask you now to visualize a pizza, let's imagine this pizza in front of us. You know, how big is a pizza with the tomato, the mozzarella, the temperature, the heat of the pizza, and it's a bit soft in the center, a little harder around on the outside. I mean, as we cut it, it's a little, I mean, if we're able to imagine that, it's because we just have more familiarity with pizza than we do with our own central channel. But we are all able to imagine. And in this case, I don't want to bring your attention to a pizza. Let's go back to our central channel instead. So our central channel that starts from our forehead, we imagine we should feel it inside. And then what we'll do, once we've imagined that, we will do what we call make a Vajra fist. So we put our thumbs, they should touch the base of our ring fingers, and then we make a fist. So at the base of the base of our ring finger, and then we make a fist. It's called the Vajra fist, and this is used in many Vajrayana practices. And this is specific to Vajrayana Buddhism, as where the other techniques that we talked about are common to all traditions. So Vajrayana is is not often explained in public, but Lama Ganchen was he always taught in an open way, and I think that this exercise, it doesn't have any negative side effects. There are some exercises based on our breath that are never explained publicly because they can lead to some very negative side effects, including craziness. So, they're not explained unless there is a solid preparation, a foundation. But here is not the case. So we make a Vajra fist. The reason why we make the Vajra fist that we find in so many practices, because it's said that where the ring finger is, there's a channel. Jangchung Sempa is the channel of bodhicitta. It's where there's the heart meridian in Chinese medicine. It's just strongly connected to our feelings. So we stimulate this channel by touching the basis of our ring finger. And when we make a fist, we're actually stimulating this meridian, this energy channel. Then I've seen this done in different ways. That we put our fists on our knees, or we go from our hips to our knees, or you start directly on your knees, and we do a kind of self massage without a lot of without pressing too hard, and we bring our on our thighs. We do this kind of self massage, and again, this is that same meridian, and then we go up along our body, and then we extend our hands, and then the right should touch the left, and then we continue with our thumb all the way into our armpit, and then the middle finger and the index finger. So the index finger goes behind the middle finger, and with the left hand, we close the left nostril. There are texts that do the opposite, but let's start here. The left closes the left nostril. We inhale deeply. We hold for a moment, and as we hold, we bring our hand on the other side, and then we breathe out strongly. To get out all the air, you can also breathe in 3 times. So we inhale, we hold, and we move to the other nostril, and we can breathe out strongly 3 times. So then we hold, and you do that for 3 times. After you do the 3 times, ideally as you hold, but if you're not able, nothing happens, then we do the same movement, but the opposite, and then we do the same thing on the other side. And here, now we have the right hand that closes the right nostril, and we inhale, and then we exhale. You inhale from one side, exhale from the other. You do that 3 times. After we finish 3 times, and then we do the opposite movement, and then we put our hands in the meditation mudras, and then we breathe 3 times. So it's the 9 comes from 3 on the left, 3 on the right, and 3 in the center. So this is the technical part. That's quite simple. There's a few details that we can add something that I've experienced, and for me personally it works. So I share with you, but you don't have to do like this. One detail is that as as w- as we do our as we inhale and exhale, it's always in 9. So I inhale and then I hold, then I exhale, I hold, then I inhale again. The last time I exhale, as I go to the other side, I'm holding my breath. So to do this well, we need to have more familiarity with deeper breathing. Otherwise, we end up, we do our final exhale and we do very quickly. We move to the other side. So it's instead of forcing and doing quickly, it's better to take a breath in. To take a breath in the middle. It's not the best, but it's possible. I mean, as I said before, we need to start where we are. Another aspect that helps, when I inhale, I inhale as much as I can, and then I push the air under my navel. And as I do that, at the same time, I'm 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 closing my lower muscles and bringing that air up, and I concentrate the energy under my navel. And you can find this exercise in many different techniques, martial arts and yoga. I remember once a Japanese judo teacher. She came here. She was 90-year-old Japanese woman, and she was doing some judo exercises. And at a certain point, there was a big, tall guy, like 1 meter 90, really strong, and he said, "Come to me. Use all the strength you have." And at first then he didn't want to be. He didn't want to use his force against her, but after just a few minutes, he was on his back, and she had him pinned to the ground, and he was saying, stop it," and she was showing that that with breath and directing this energy is amazingly and that's where all the energy and the strength and the force is. And so also the translation of prana in Chinese is chi, and she was using that. So when we inhale, we push the air down, and then we very lightly, without contracting too much, without forcing, we just contract our lower muscles, and we do this vase breathing where we unite the energies. We unite and we concentrate our breathing here, three points underneath our navel. If we can do this, then we start training. In this kind of breathing that becomes very important for future meditations. So when we breathe in, we imagine that this air goes goes inside. We imagine that it goes on to one side channel, and one goes to the next. As I exhale, any kind of energetic block is released. So we bring in the air to clean, and to clean the accumulated tension. So I inhale, before we fill up our air, we bring it down and we hold it there. As we're holding it, and I concentrate, my lower muscles are contracted slightly. And so this energy is here, 3 fingers under my navel. And then I move to the other side and I exhale. I push up towards, and it comes out the other nostril, taking away all these energetic blocks. When our hands are united, we inhale from both nostrils. I bring the air down. At this point, we visualize that it goes into both nostrils, into both side channels. It enters the central channel. It cleans our central channel, and it comes back. And as I exhale, they go out on it goes out the side channels, cleaning completely our central channel. There are a few variations. But this is a simple exercise. We don't need a lot of time, and I think it brings a lot of good results quite easily. Some kind of question on this in particular? When you exhale, and then you also release your lower winds. I saw once a monk in Tibet who was able to do this exercise perfectly. We had gone to the mountains with Lama Ganshen. It was incredibly difficult. You can't even imagine. It was like 5,500. We got up to 6,000 meters. I promised myself I would never get up that high, but halfway up, we found a retreat place. There was a kind of, it was a cave, and then they made like half cave, half mountain hut, and there were monks who were doing retreats, and they came out to greet Lama Ganshen. And Lama Ganshen asked them to show them their exercises, and had an opportunity to talk to them. He asked, and we were able to film them. I've and and I've never shown it because he made me promise that I would never show this video to anyone who didn't have all the preparation necessary to see it. But he would inhale, and you could see that he would bring all of this air down. And he did this kind of vase breathing, and then he did all these other Tibetan yoga exercises with his breath held. And when he would finish, it was like he would open up a valve and all the air would come out. It was particular. And I asked him, he said, I learned this because before I learned teachings on motivation, etc. And at the end, my master had me do 100 days of solitary retreat on this. And then he gave me the practice of Kala Chakra with the mantra visualization. And I did 100 days of retreat on this. And then he gave me the teachings on how to breathe. Another 100 days of retreat where I wasn't able to do even a single mantra, just breathe, breathing exercises. And then after, he gave me the explanations on the yoga exercises, and he had just finished his retreat on these yoga exercises. It's one of the techniques at the basis of this kind of a parkour, this path, is the vase breathing, and he really knew how to do it in a special, excellent way, and I was very touched by him. We're still at the very, very beginning, but that kind of breathing is the basis to be able to develop the inner heat. Even in a cold place, for example, doing this kind of breathing, and where we concentrate this energy, just three fingers underneath the navel that generates inner heat. Once we were doing a retreat in Brazil, and it was very cold, and people were complaining a little bit, and I said, oh, um, um, I said, or we go away or we try to do something. I said, well, let's try to do this inner fire meditation. And there was a young girl, and maybe she was 7, 8 years old, and she did it, and she was very concentrated. At a certain point, she was sweating. She's like, look, I'm sweating. And then, I mean, she did it with, it was, she did it so strongly. She even had a little bit of pain the next day around her, on her tush, because she was pushing too hard. But the more we're able to integrate this type of breathing with other things, little by little, we create familiarity. And then later, if someone wants to go on to learn other techniques, this is a very good basis. And in any case, it's helpful now. So we inhale, we push the air down, and as we push it down, we bring our air up and we concentrate three fingers underneath our navel. So when I inhale from my right to my right nostril, I bring the energy 3 fingers under my navel, and as I move to the other side, then I exhale and I push out all of the air and release. There are techniques, like maybe those who do this movement, they do it by pressing harder. But the way I learned, it should be done gently. Even, I mean, there are traditions. There are traditions where you exhale with strongly. I learned just to exhale gently. So I'd say let's do it once now together, and then we move on to do other things. Then at least we have to to grasp what we've just learned. Is this exercise clear? So just to add some information, the two channels are related to our to the two side channels are related to attraction and aversion, our male and female energy, because all of our negative emotions are based either on attraction or aversion, and this exercise is very connected to that. Just to give you more information, it's like our brain, where the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and vice versa. The right side of our body corresponds to the male energy, and the left to our female energy. So we have a female, the female energy related to attraction, and male energy related to aversion. And the channels are inverted. So left channel for male energy of aversion, and the right side channel, female energy related to attraction. This is just some extra information. In this moment, what's important is that we're concentrating, we're eliminating blocks that, and we're eliminating blocks, we're dissolving blocks that were created from our mental defilements of attraction and aversion. So we sit down in a comfortable position with our back straight but not tense. Our shoulders are relaxed. Our head is slightly bent forward and our mouth is relaxed. Our tongue touches our palate and our eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards. We allow ourselves to be present in this present moment. we visualize our central channel and the two side channels. We generate awareness on our breath by breathing in 4 phases. We inhale, we hold, we exhale, and hold. We make a Vajra fist and we follow with the exercise of 9 round breathing. inhale and exhale. Okay. In this way, we conclude this exercise. Generally, we would unite this with the meditation on our breath, after which we keep this cycle of our awareness of our breath, and then we unite that with um, bringing our attention specifically onto our breath. And you can do this also when you don't have a lot of time, or during the day, early in the morning. You can always do this. Maybe before a different meditation practice. It's a very valid exercise and and brings good results. The more you do it, the more familiarity you'll create with it. Brings very good results. Now, let's say that what we've seen so far, if you did this, just this day and night, it's what we'd need for 3 months of practice, because it's said that to reach a point of stable concentration with a simple technique, concentration technique, like concentrating on our breath. If we did only this 7 days a week without doing anything else, they say that this is enough to develop perfect concentration in 3 months, which seems to me that that's not a lot of time at all. But imagine doing this, imagine doing this for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what we do on retreat. But in the meantime, if you're not able to do that, try to bring it to your daily life. There's something I'd like to talk about. Something we brought it up before lunch, and those are the antidotes. What are the dangers when we start to meditate? What takes us away from our meditation is mental agitation, distraction, and a foggy mindedness. And here we need Drempa and Shershing, memory, and vigilance. So the memory of where we want to go, and the vigilance of this awareness of what we're actually doing. So our mind should always be focused on our object of meditation, and instead there's another part of our mind that starts to observe, to make sure that the mind doesn't go somewhere else. So we have one part of our attention that is watchful, is vigilant, to make sure that the mind doesn't go somewhere else. But this develops well, that if this develops well if even in our daily life we're able to have this kind of vigilance, watchfulness, so, without being paranoid. It's a little bit like as I'm driving, there's some part of driving that's absolutely automatic, but there's another part of our mind that is watchful. It watches out for danger. There is a present attention. It's a little bit like that. One should be relaxed on our object of meditation, but there's a part of the mind that's also watching, making sure we don't go off the road. And if we see that we're starting to get out of our lane, then we get back. So this is important to have this. So when we sit down to meditate on our breath, try to have that awareness of these two aspects. Remember what our object of meditation is, and remember, or more than remember, no, be aware of what is happening. It being vigilant. It's mindful recollection and vigilance. I'm trying to organize a little bit of my ideas because there's so many things I'd like to share with you. And I always have this feeling that there's just not enough time. Time goes by so quickly. So there are a few important things that I wanted to leave for tomorrow, but there's between just getting to there, there's a lot that I'd like to explain. So I need to choose. So I'd like to speak briefly about a meditation technique that I think is valid, especially in the context in which we live in our culture, which is part of is part of analytical meditation. Analytical meditation requires taking an object and literally analyzing it, a little bit like an equation. Let's, 2 plus 2 is 4, the easiest thing in the world. But there's a difference between 2 plus 2 and 4. 4 is not necessarily the result of 2 plus 2. It could be also the result of 3 plus 1, or it could just be 4. When we see 4, do we see 2 plus 2? Not necessarily. So in analytical meditation, it's like I review this equation and I get to the result. And when I get to the result, I transform that result into a single pointed meditation where that result in reality also covers and includes the equation. Because if I say 2 plus 2 is 4, and then I focus on the 4, that 4 includes the 2 plus 2. Is that clear what I'm saying? I'm going to give you a practical example. There's so many meditations on this, but it's mostly it helps us generate states of consciousness that don't come spontaneously. For example, we use this for the preciousness of this life, and then the meditation on impermanence. So let's start with the meditation on the preciousness of this life. So the rarity of the precious conditions that we have in this life. So what do we need to familiarize ourselves with? What do we want to meditate on? On this feeling, this inner feeling that I have a marvelous opportunity. It's just a worthy, a unique. So I have a feeling of joy together with the urgency that I need to do something. So like if I needed to meditate on impermanence, on the certainty of death and the uncertainty of the moment of death, I need to familiarize myself with that feeling, that inner feeling that I am going to die and I don't know when. It's not a concept, it's a feeling. So how can I generate this feeling of how precious this life is? I need to analyze it. So I begin an inner process as if we were telling someone that doesn't believe that this life is precious. And there are so many texts on every subject that can help. And texts and commentaries and reflections and studies. But let's take, for example, the preciousness of this life. And we start with, let's reflect on what we all want independently of who we are and where we are. We all want to be happy. We recognize that at the end of the day, a material development is not enough to be happy. We need actually, uh, we need to we need to develop patience and love and stability. And as long as we're not happy with ourselves, we'll never be happy with others, or well with ourselves, well with others. But to be able to do this, I need to familiarize myself with my qualities and dedicate time to this inner growth. And there are some minimum qualities, minimum conditions necessary, having having the minimum necessary to not worry about one's own survival, having a path and that someone to guide us correctly, and having and wanting to follow this path. Let's start with the first. Let's think about this planet where we live. There are um, uh, seven, there's some who say 8 billion people on this planet. I have some outdated data. Let's say we're 7 billion. Among these 7 billion people, can how many don't need to worry? No, let's do it the opposite way. How many live under the poverty line? The number that I had just a few years ago, and I think actually, unfortunately, it has worsened. It talked about 2.5 billion people under the poverty line. So 7 billion. So 2.5 billion people out of 7 wake up and they don't know if they have food to eat. They worry about their physical survival. We're talking about not having food to eat, not being able to take care of themselves when they get sick. If if someone is constantly hungry, do they have time to stop and meditate? Unfortunately, I mean, there are exceptions, but in reality, no. The other 2.5 billion people, so that's 5, they are just above the poverty line, which means these are people that need to dedicate their entire lives just to survive. That means that one works very, very hard, and what I earn from my job, I've just enough to survive. I'm not afraid to not eat, but I don't have anything left. And if I stop for for a few days, for a few months, I won't have anything. This is now happening in Brazil. These last 2 years in Brazil, with the lockdown and the pandemic, people who were living in a precarious situation and they weren't able to continue working because things are closed. They've lost their jobs and they've lost their homes, and I mean entire families. They're homeless, and it's a very, very difficult, precarious situation. So there are about 2.5 billion who are just above that poverty line. If one needs to work 16 hours a day to have food on the table, how much space does one have to meditate? Very little. Okay, so now we have 2 billion people left. Among the remaining 2 billion, how many are slaves to money, slaves to pleasure, slaves to power and recognition? How many live for those things? Just look around those that we know, to those we know. How many how many people choose to have a more meaningful life and to develop themselves spiritually, instead of earning more money, etc. I mean, the one who chooses, you know, one who chooses a meaningful spiritual life is definitely the minority and seen like a crazy person. So if we look around, how many actually how many people are slaves? I mean, slaves because they are living for those things. So there is a minority. There's a minority of these 2 billion that they open themselves up to other things. And I don't mean to say that they're free of attachment, etc., but they're not slaves, let's say. But inside, among those, how many want to follow a spiritual path? They find a correct spiritual path, a valid spiritual path. How many want to, but are not able to meet that spiritual path? Or, or how many actually meet those who guide them um, on a wrong path, independently of the religion? I mean, just think about people you know, those those who have the minimum necessary, the material necessary. Those are already a minimum, and those who are not slaves, that's a minority. Those who are able to come into contact with a valid spiritual path is a minority, and among those who want to practice, you know, many just want to be part of to be part of a spiritual path, but don't actually want to play put themselves in the game. So we're talking about the minority of the minority, which doesn't. We're not better than anyone else, but we have a marvelous opportunity. I mean, we're the minority of the minority of the minority, and we have this opportunity to cultivate our qualities, to take the responsibility of our lives onto ourselves. And these conditions that we have are not easy to find. It's not so it's not so simple. Buddha Shakyamuni said having these conditions, the probability that one has when he dies to find these conditions again is the same probability of a turtle, who has a very, very, very long life, who lives at the depths of the ocean, who comes up once every 100 years to get air. And let's remember that this turtle is also blind and deaf. And in the middle of the ocean, there's a buoy that just goes around the ocean. It's the same probability of this turtle coming up for air and putting his head through this life buoy, this life raft. So why us and not others? I have no idea. And it doesn't make us better than others, because if we had those same conditions, we wouldn't do differently than them. I mean, we really have a special life. We have so many unique and special things, and so many more special things than problems. I mean, are we able to feel this, to perceive this? This is the analytical process. I did it together with you. When we do it by ourselves, we should get to the feeling of what a marvelous opportunity I have. I can't let it slide through my fingers. I need to use this opportunity. When we get to this feeling, we stay with this feeling, and we stay single pointedly meditated on this feeling, this state. The next meditation, I'm going to die. I don't know when, I don't know how, so I need to do something right away. So I need to generate in me this feeling that I have a precious life, just a unique life, and I don't have time to waste. And this opportunity that I have to grow, to develop myself, to die a better person than the one that was born, I don't know if it's going to happen again. If I use it well, I can be sure to have a good continuity after my death. But if I don't use it well, once I lose this opportunity, who knows if I'll be able to get it again. So, and here we're going to the next step. So in analytical meditation, we induce a certain feeling to ourselves. You can do this with love or patience, generosity, with compassion, awareness of impermanence, the correct view of reality, the lack of inherent existence. Um, there's so many things that these are states of consciousness that don't come to us spontaneously because we take for granted the conditions we have, don't we? I mean, how often do you wake up and say, "Oh, how fortunate I am! Look at these marvelous conditions I have." Normally, we know how to value things when we are losing them or when we're afraid of losing them. So we need to induce these feelings. It's not false, it's sincere, but they need to be induced artificially because by themselves it doesn't come. And this part of inducing to ourselves, this is analytical meditation that we need to follow step after step. A lot, is that clear? It's very important. It is very important. It means, I mean, there are very specific steps, the states of consciousness that we need to develop to gradually better our qualities, to develop love, compassion, wisdom. These two that I mentioned now, these are the among the first. There's another type of analytical meditation that I'd like to explain, and now that I've explained this first part, it'll be easier to understand. How can I, for example, meditate on patience? In the following way. The first thing, we're there seated, we bring our mind to a state of balance, like some meditation on our breath, concentration, 9-round breathing exercise, etc. And then we do an analytical meditation where we explain to someone else, as if we were explaining to someone, all the reasons why we shouldn't get angry, how harmful anger is, how harmful hate is, that no matter what happens, it's not a reason to get angry. The conclusion that we need to get to is no matter what happens, it's not a valid reason to get angry. We harm only ourselves. If we want to get into the details, we can spend hours. There's the 6th chapter of the text of Bodhisattva Charavattara, which is the Bodhisattva's way of life, that talks about this. This is a marvelous, marvelous chapter. So we look at the benefits of not acting, not reacting with aggression. We analyze this. Once we've finished our analysis, there's a different point here compared to the first one. It's the same, but we do it differently. We take now for a minute. We take that analytical part and we set it aside. It's clear to me that there's no reason to get angry, and I take that conclusion and I set it aside. I go back to my neutral state and I start imagining a situation that normally would bring me to get angry. We imagine it in all of its details. The person who's there, who says that thing, we imagine the scene, and we let that, we try to live it not conceptually, but we let that experience appear so much that there's inner movement. When that inner movement, where that anger is starting to show its face, at that point we take the previous analysis and we apply it. Well, why are you getting upset? What are you doing? Stop being an idiot. Peace. And we talk to ourselves until in visualizations we can be in front of this object of anger and not react with aggression, because we can't practice patience if we don't have an object of anger. So I'm in front of my object of anger. The anger starts to arise. That's where I apply patience. I apply compassion. And in visualizations, I'm able to be in front of my object of anger and not react with aggression, verbally, mentally, or physically. this is incredibly powerful, much more powerful than trying to meditate on patience without having an object of anger, because we need to use the antidote where there's the poison. And the same thing, we can do this with our jealousy, with our sense of abandonment. First, we generate our antidote in an analytical way. We set it aside. We recall the poison. We apply the antidote. Once we've applied the antidote, we stay. We stay in that state of of um, of neutralized poison, the antidote that's been applied. If you can do this several times, the next time you're in front of that object of anger that you had visualized, your reaction will certainly be different, because our reaction is commanded not by uh, um, by our by our understanding, but by our experience. At the beginning, when you do this practice on patience, for example, if you do it well, the first couple times you'll finish the practice angry. Oh, I tried, but okay, this means that you're doing well. If you're able to do it well right away, then perhaps you were just doing some mind games, and you didn't really let the poison come out and allow yourself to apply the antidote. And here we open up a door to show what it means to change our object of meditation. So from our breath, it becomes patience or gratitude, or the preciousness of this life becomes love. So many things. These qualities that we want to familiarize ourselves with. But to do this, if I'm there, oh, the preciousness of this life, okay, oh, I need to work. I mean, that's that's much harder. When we're able to concentrate, that allows us to really familiarize ourselves with these aspects. Okay, I know that on one side it's a lot. I mean, here we have we have work for many lifetimes ahead of us, but it's important for us to know, try to apply. And what I'd like to see tomorrow is to see another type of meditation, which where we bring it's called we bring the result into the path, united with the practice of self-healing. It's all connected, but there are various instruments that we can use, and one thing helps understand another. So this last part, is there any question? Is there something that wasn't clear? What's important, I repeat, is that I can meditate on love by generating feelings of love, but if I don't apply that feeling of love, um, to me, then it's detached from me. I can generate patience, be patient and calm, but then if I just leave that in front of me and I don't apply it to my nervousness, my object of anger, it's something that I'm watching from the outside. I'm detached from it. It's I can buy the entire pharmacy, for example, but if I don't take the right medicine that I need, I could even harm myself, because one substance can be poison or medicine. It's medicine when it's used to eliminate a sickness, a poison. Tibetan medicine says that any substance that exists is potentially medicine. And in the same way, it's potentially also poison. It depends to whom it's given and how it's given. So we need to apply our antidote where the poison is. And this technique, the fact that first I generate the antidote, then I let that poison arise so that I can apply the antidote. Just as I said, the practice we did before, when I look at the preciousness of this life and I conclude that, I can either stay in that state or I can set it aside and allow that attitude that we have of taking things for granted, let that arise, and then we can apply that conclusion of the preciousness of this life. We're applying the antidote where the poison is. Please. The poison, these are our conditionings, our anger, our jealousy, our fear, etc. The visualization to generate it, you're free to be creative. So it shouldn't, whatever wakens up that negative that mental defilement. Maybe it's easier for some, harder for others. There were masters that at a certain point they had developed a certain level of patience, and nothing around them would make them lose their patience. What they would do is they would go and look for extreme situations. So they would invent crazy things just to see people react negatively to them, just to look for that hidden negativity. I'd say here we can conclude. Now we have there's a part that's important for me, which is the part for help and action, and share a little bit, because what happens is I said that I would have brought a book, and then during lunch I didn't go home. Tomorrow I'll bring it. But there's a passage of this book. It's really beautiful, and it says we need to take care of ourselves. We need to work on ourselves. We need to start with ourselves, do for ourselves, learn about ourselves, but we do all this not for ourselves. We do all of this for others. I need to work on myself, take care of myself, but not. I work on myself so that I can do this for others. And when we talk about taking care of others, there are many levels. Even when we look at the ways of helping other people, so let's remember that we can help people exclusively by interacting with them. And if we cite Saint Francis, it's by giving that we receive. When Buddha talked about talked about reaching enlightenment, he said to be able to have realizations and to generate love and wisdom, etc. We need to have the basis, a strong basis of virtue, and it's by sharing and by giving that we can have the strongest virtuous base. And Buddha just said that the first way to help is to help materially. So someone who needs food, we need to give him food. So it's useless that I go to someone who's hungry and tell them to focus on love towards all beings and to focus on their breath. I repeat, this doesn't mean that we are better than others. It's simply we have better conditions and we need to know how to use them well. So something that Lama Ganchen always taught us is that we try to share with others the resources and the possibilities that we have. I think this is important. Not this feeling of guilt because I have more than others, so I clean my conscience by giving something. No, in the real sense, the joy of sharing, wanting to share. And so when Lama Ganchen arrived to the West, as I said this morning, he saw that there was an abundance of the material wealth in the West, and instead where he came, but And but he also saw that there was a spiritual poverty. Not that Christianity is at all poor, but so he said, I can give spiritually, but and that's where he made this exchange because and then he Kyoba Chok Sung, the name he gave in English is help in action for this association because in the East there was a this spiritual wealth but material poverty, and so this association, um, given the given the connections that Lama Gachin had with Tibet, Nepal, India, Mongolia, was able to help many people. And for example, in Tibet, we've planted hundreds of thousands of books. We've made schools and dispensaries, and then the Chinese government changed their um, they they changed their politics in Tibet, and they gave a tremendous value to the agriculture in Tibet, and so they started the Chinese government started building schools and infrastructure and agriculture support. So they didn't need our help anymore. So for formal um, and also for conditions of access, etc. Given the change in conditions, we're um, we're putting our energy into Nepal, where we have a constant presence. In Kathmandu, where Lama Gachin has a house, there's a school was founded there. Setin Gyurme, one of the best friends of Lama Gachin, he for many years had a great rug factory, for example, and now it's much smaller. And in these years, at a certain point, he saw the need to take care of the families of the factory workers. Very, 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 um, very, very poor people. So the factory actually almost closed, but Help in Action really started continued helping these families. But what's beautiful is that we're able to accompany these families years after year. Sharon and Erika, Carlota also who helps, Erika and Sharon, they know every child, every family. For years they've been helping. So we've chosen, how can I say, I'll try to say it in a nice way. I mean, we're selfish, aren't we? Right? We want a little bit of ego massage, and so we want to be recognized, and so we've chosen to do adoptions, long distance adoptions where there's um, a direct contact. But the reality is that the money is given to everyone, So it's not we have 15 children in need and 20 have been adopted. No, the resources that are collected are divided among all those in need. But there's a direct relationship between those who are adopted and those who are supporting, and the letters, etc. And what we've been able to do over the years is to have a constant relationship, a stable contact, both with the school, and I think there are 500, 600 children at this school, and I was at the school not long ago, and it's beautiful. And we try to give what they need, and most of the children who are there, they're not from Buddhist families, but and at the basis of everything we do, and we don't want to convert anyone, we try to share in the best way possible, and try to give them what they need. I wanted to talk about this here because if we went upstairs, the room is much smaller, we'd be uncomfortable. But so here we're in a particular time, and actually in the story of Help in Action, that's now a foundation. For many years, it had a relationship one-to-one. Up to a few years ago, it was never in the digital world. It was um, so it was a little old style, and now it's more difficult. So there are fewer people who actually help. We're in a time where economically things are difficult in Europe. But I was just there, for example, when I was at the school, and I was talking to the school principal, and he was saying that the cost of life is increasing. I need to increase the pay of the teachers, otherwise they'll go somewhere else. So there is this need to support them. So we need to help, and I chose myself to have a day dedicated to Help in Action. I mean, we've had these two beautiful projects that are co-sponsored by the Italian Buddhist Union through the 8 for 1,000, these taxes, these monasteries. But even there, so we received money from we received 70% of the money from the Italian Buddhist Union, and the other 30% we have to pay. So we start with a deficit. So it's not that we go to the children and it's not that we take on children for their schooling, and then the following year we say, oh no, we've lost 30 sponsors. No, well, maybe we give a little bit less to everyone, but we need to keep everything afloat, and it's a little bit delicate. So it's a phase, it's a moment where everyone needs to put in some help. Those who know me well know that rarely would you see me talk about something like this and actually ask. I don't know. In general, I prefer to take out of my own pocket instead of asking. But here we're not asking, we're sharing. So you know that this is a reality that exists. And as a center, Help in Action is an important branch of the center who does the humanitarian opium work from 1997 formally. Even before 1994, I mean, even before, just a short story here. When Lama Ganchen in the 1980s, even in the 1970s, in the 1970s, Lama Ganchen lived in the south of India where there was a lot of poverty, and every time that he would go to someone's house, people would tell him about their troubles. I don't have money for this, I don't have money for that. I mean, these were poor refugees, and what would he do? He would go to those who had just a little bit more and ask for a loan, and he would give it to the poorer people, a kind of Robin Hood, but with loans. But then he ended up with so many loans, and he wasn't able to pay them back. And in the end, he did pay them back. But I lived with Lama Ganchen for years, and the work of Help in Action started. Once a year, he would go to India and Nepal. He would empty out every single bank account. The center would have zero money, and he would take everything. He'd get to Bangalore, he would change everything into to rupees. I remember mountains of rupees, and then he'd go there, and then there were lines of people that would come and talk to them about their troubles, the one who needed a surgery, the one who needed to go to school, the one who needed to go to hospital. And he would do this directly. And then at a certain point, he said, I can't do it myself. And he asked people, you know, you do what I do. And so this association was created to help. And that's it. I wanted to I wanted you to know that this reality exists. It's one of the manifestations of our realities of our centers. I'm very, very proud. I'm very grateful to those who work for this foundation. So there are two very short videos. We're going to show them, and there's a longer video upstairs, and in your break you can go and see that. And then after we finish this, there's the dissolution of the sun mandala that was created.
Le comunità racchiuse tra le montagne dell'Himalaya sono state per secoli avvolte in un alone di mistero. Molte comunità sono ancora prive di servizi scolastici, medici e assistenziali. I bambini spesso non possono andare a scuola e le persone anziane, malate o disabili non hanno sostegno né accesso a cure mediche.
So these are very poor areas, and since 1992, Help in Action works to better life of these people through various humanitarian projects and the help and adoption. So they receive schooling and hope for a better life for them, for their families. Many have gotten to high school, some to university, and have been able to find work as well. So these projects give back also dignity and hope to disabled people and old people, and also Tibetan monasteries, covering needs of the monks to preserve a precious spiritual tradition. They're able to support many children who come from very poor families. So they've also been able to build many schools. The Ganshin Gangling School in Kathmandu has over 400 children, most from very poor families. Every year, thousands of children receive school material. And they also teach knowledge and concrete possibilities to learn for jobs. They've created dispensaries. Many villages in Tibet now have access to water thanks to building aqueducts and pumps, and they were also able, they planted thousands of trees to combat the erosion and drought. Even after, for example, the earthquake in Nepal, thousands of families received medicines and water, shoes, covers, and basic necessities. So they help families in just desperate situations. All of this is organized thanks to the generosity of thousands of people, or small and large companies, and the founder of ONLIS is Lama Michel Rinpoche. And he's worked for this positive exchange between East and West. And the name actually means helping the poor and the forgotten. So adopting a child is 20 euros a month. So you can help by sharing on social media, or by sponsoring a child yourself, or even your company maybe can take on the sponsorship. These are projects that they're doing now in Nepal. Now, there are 2 monasteries in Kathmandu, and in Nepal in this moment, the monasteries have also been a place to house children from very, very poor families, families that don't have the possibility to educate their children. So they would leave the children there for 10 years, and then they'd come back and take their children back. And at first it seemed like a problem, but now but it's really beautiful. It's a way to help them. But in the Segyu Monastery, there are 8 older monks and 150 children monks. Another monastery, it seems like an orphanage. It's like the house where you raise children. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have children, but it's just an enormous number of children that need to be educated. We have Western friends, one who after COVID had to stay there, and her job is just to keep the children clean, make sure that they brush their teeth and wash up, and we pay also to make sure that there's someone who teaches the basic things to mathematics and the language, because maybe the children choose the religious life, or they choose to do something else with their lives. So we're lacking physical space. So one part is finished, and another part they're building now to make rooms, also to make school, to make classrooms for them.
Usually our class is this one, because we cannot use anymore.
Queste sono le scuole, le classi di solito.
This is our class. They are full of water here. This one is full of water. Also, building is not set. Yeah, building is not set. Usually, because we use it here for classroom. Now you cannot use anymore. Also, building also not safety. Like this. Okay.
Sì, anche dopo il terremoto hanno continuato
because even after the earthquake, they started. They kept using the buildings, which is it's great. Even after the earthquake.
Yeah. Outside's raining. Now outside raining, inside also. Yeah, like this. We still are using this building right now. In Europe, absolutely illegal to use this kind of building. Okay, now we go out here. Then like we're going to pray for health and action. Yeah, that's it.
Questo è per...
This
Questo è
this is the Pegeling monastery where we're doing the project now. The other one is Segyu. They've already finished the new school where the 150 children are. So these two projects, there's something I have to say. They were done on the base of faith and taking advantage of an opportunity, because we could have this support from the Italian Buddhist Union. They gave us 70% of the project, but we don't have the other 30%. But we said let's do it. So now we need to find this other 30%. So this is one of the difficulties that's come out, because generally speaking, what's important to say about to help in action is that the money that's received is used for the activities. It's not that there's some kind of fund, like an emergency fund, that we can use for bureaucratic things. No, what comes in is used. I think it's like 98% of the resources that are collected are used. This is very important. Just one last thing I want to say about this. Seeing these images, what touched me when I was even at the school this last time, that these peoples in Nepal, in Tibet, etc., they have they have a very worthy culture. Something that is missing for us. There's a spirituality at the basis. I mean, that we are receiving from the East, and we give a lot of value to it. But if they don't have the minimum necessary to survive, that is also going to disappear. So we give them their basic needs to of having an education, to have a basic, to have a job, and to be able with dignity to maintain their own culture. And I'd like to add, in Kathmandu, everyone is welcome to come and visit Kathmandu. We don't have a formal program of travel, but the Drupkang, which is the the house of Lama Ganchen, which is connected directly to the center, is open to everyone. Everyone can go there. You can go to the monastery. You can go to the school. It's open to everyone. So I'd like to say, now let's go upstairs because there's the dissolution of the mandala. Enrica and Shara, they're upstairs. I'd like to thank them, and there'll be space also. It's space to talk, and at 6:30 there will be another session. I think that's clear, right? Thank you.
Dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke chingelo kuncho sumke ngodrubot sol kuncho sumke trashishu. Okay.
Okay, let's go upstairs. Thank you. And we'll come back at 6:30.